At Fort Benning, Georgia, at the Army Sniper School training grounds, the sun blazed down, scorching the dry sand and the distant simulated town range. A group of veterans, invited to participate in Heritage Day, sat under an awning, watching a team of active duty snipers perform a routine precision shooting demonstration. The crack of gunfire echoed, and distant targets fell with a resounding success. Most of the veterans wore well-worn jackets emblazoned with unit insignia, their faces etched with the marks of time and a subtle hint of pride. Among them, one elderly man, remarkably silent, stood out. His name was Isaac Morgan. He wore a washed-out jungle camouflage jacket and clutched a well-worn, long, hard case, which he never opened. He simply watched quietly, his gray-blue eyes like deep wells, reflecting little emotion. At the end of the demonstration, the crowd erupted in polite applause. Major General Frank Perry, a two-star Army officer, walked to the center of the field. He swept his gaze over the snipers and veterans present, his voice booming. "Gentlemen, today's demonstration was a brilliant one. But war often doesn't take place at ideal ranges or under ideal conditions." He paused, then pointed to an extremely tricky spot at the far end of the training ground, a window on the second floor of a half-collapsed concrete building. Not only was the window narrow, but the view was also obscured by interlaced weathered steel bars and a tattered canvas sheet that partially obscured the view. "There's an enemy observer out there, carrying crucial intelligence, and he's extremely alert with minimal exposure. Your mission: identify and kill him with precision within 3 seconds of his next appearance." He laid out the conditions for the challenge, but there's a catch. First, the firing position can only be set up on this brushy reverse slope behind you. There's a steady, unpredictable crosswind between you and the target, with wind speeds fluctuating between 7 and 10 knots. Second, you're not allowed to use any electronic anemometers, ballistic calculators, or even Kestrel handheld weather stations. You must rely solely on basic observation and empirical judgment. Third, the bullet must pass through the gaps between the steel bars of the target window with pinpoint accuracy. The slightest deviation will result in impact with the steel and mission failure. A hush fell on the scene. The active snipers frowned. They were accustomed to the auxiliary data provided by laser rangefinders, ballistic software, and sophisticated meteorological instruments. Stripping away these high-tech crutches, achieving precision fire at ultra-long ranges, over 800 meters, in such complex crosswinds, and calculating the subtle deflection of the bullet as it passed through the gaps between the steel bars. It was a nearly impossible task. Several top active snipers tentatively offered estimates, but all seemed unsure, admitting that the probability of a first-shot hit under such conditions was unacceptably low. A flicker of disappointment flashed across General Perry's eyes, but it seemed predictable. He was about to say something. "General," a calm voice echoed from the crowd of veterans. Everyone turned. It was Isaac Morgan. He slowly stood up and finally opened the old gun case. Inside lay an M408 sniper rifle, in excellent condition, though clearly outdated. Even the wooden stock bore the marks of time. "Mr. Morgan?" General Perry was surprised. "If you're allowed," Isaac's voice, low, but with a strange penetrating power, "I'd like to try." A murmur of discussion arose. The active snipers looked at the antique in his hands with suspicion. The gun lacked even a proper tactical rail or a modern scope. General Perry stared at him for a few seconds, then nodded. "Please, Mr. Morgan." Isaac did not head for his designated sniper spot on the reverse slope. Instead, he slowly walked over to a nearby area covered in wormwood. He crouched down, scooped up a handful of dry sand, and let it trickle through his fingers, observing its direction and speed. He squinted, watching the barely visible wisps of steam distorting the distant landscape. He picked up a few dry blades of grass and tossed them into the air, carefully tracking their tumbling paths. The entire process took about 2 minutes. He had no modern tools, relying entirely on his eyes and feel. Then, he reached a discreet depression on the reverse slope, slowly crouched, and set up his M401. He adjusted the wheel of his old Unertl high-power scope, his movements slow and steady, as if performing some sacred ritual. The entire training ground fell silent. Everyone held their breath as they watched the old man and his ancient rifle. Suddenly, in the distant window, a human-shaped target trembled briefly, simulating the appearance of a target. Almost the instant the target appeared, perhaps even earlier, thanks to his astonishing foresight, Isaac pulled the trigger. Bang! A slightly muffled, yet remarkably steady gunshot. The bullet traveled a long distance, its flight time seemingly stretched out. Everyone stared intently at the window. A moment later, the observer's voice, tinged with incredible excitement, rang out over the radio. Hit! God! The bullet! The bullet passed between 2 bars, about a finger's width to the right. It hit the target right between the eyebrows. Silence. A deathly silence. And then, a roar of applause and exclamation erupted. The active snipers stared at Isaac, their suspicion replaced by shock and awe. General Perry strode over to Isaac, eyeing the old M401 in his hand. His voice trembled slightly. What's your guess about the wind speed? Average 8.5 knots, gusting to 11 knots, from left to right. With a slight downdraft, Isaac replied calmly, carefully ejecting the shell a hand-reloaded .308 Winchester. Who are you? General Perry asked, echoing the question on everyone's mind. Isaac slowly stood up. He didn't answer directly, but gently stroked a nearly worn-down notch on the rifle's stock. An equally aged veteran nearby, wearing Ranger and Special Forces insignia on his chest, answered for him, his voice choking with sobs. General ... he's Windtalker Morgan. 75th Ranger Regiment, Lengwa Commando, Task Force Ranger. Mogadishu, 1993. On that damned day of Black Hawk Down, he used this old rifle, at a range of over 900 yards, braving the chaotic, ever-changing crosswinds of Somali street fighting, to single-handedly suppress militia fire from 3 rooftops, clearing a bloody path for the aid convoy. His recorded confirmed kills. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. He's a living legend. Windtalker. That Cody name struck like a bolt of lightning, striking many who had heard that urban legend-like name. General Perry snapped to attention, raised his right hand, and gave Isaac Morgan a solemn military salute. All the active duty soldiers behind him, including the proud snipers, stood at attention and saluted. Isaac looked at them, at the old rifle that had accompanied him for most of his life, and finally, an indescribable emotion welled up in his eyes. He slowly and perfectly returned the salute. He said nothing. But at that moment, silence spoke louder than words. The old M401 sniper rifle, gleaming in the sunlight, seemed to tell a story of skill, courage, and an enduring legacy. Some abilities, once ingrained into one's bones, remain with one's life, no matter how time passes or how technology advances.